Hello friends and welcome to today's episode of Booked. I'm your host, Saffron Asteria, and I'm joined today by Eric LaRocca. Thank you so much for joining me today. How are you doing?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored to talk to you. And when you reached out on Twitter, I was like, oh my God, I would love to talk to them. This would be like so fun. So I really appreciate you wanting to chat with me about my books and just being so kind. It means a lot.
Of course. Do you know what? I think it's much easier for people to be like rude online than it is to be nice. And I'm like, any opportunity that I can make people feel a bit nicer, then I'll take it. But I can't believe you said yes. So thank you for being here. I feel a little bit fangirly and nervous and excited. So thank you for sharing your work with the world and for sharing your time with me today. So I'm just looking forward to diving in, really. So I read Wretch probably in a day, maybe 2 days, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. And so I was like, okay, well, I need to speak to Eric then. Because otherwise it's going to haunt me forever. And then I recently read The Trees Grew Because I Bled There, and that screwed with me in a good way, in the best way.
Yeah.
That's what I want from books that I read. So before I ask you a bunch of questions, could you tell the audience a little bit about what sorts of things you write?
Yeah, absolutely. So I write pretty much like transgressive queer fiction with an emphasis on like horror literature, horror fiction. I have always kind of just been drawn to the dark and the macabre and the unsettling ever since I was really little. I grew up reading I first started out when I was really young reading like Agatha Christie mysteries and
Really?
Roald Dahl, like short stories, like his stories for adults. Like I really liked his stories for adults. And from there I just like discovered this fascination with just the dark and the menacing. And my parents saw that at an early age, and they could have easily been like, you know, this is not the path I want for you. But they were so nurturing and so supportive. So it's been such a pleasure to see them react to my journey as a writer because they are like the most supportive people on the planet, and they didn't always understand why horror specifically, but they never ever like questioned it. They were never like, you can't like this stuff, right? Like it was always like, I don't get it, but I'm gonna still support you anyway. And
That's so nice.
I think that's like lovely. I think that's lovely because horror is not, it's honestly like not for everybody. And I think especially the horror that I love and that I enjoy writing is certainly not for everybody, and it's very niche. But that's okay. That's what makes it special, I feel like, in a lot of ways, because the people that it's for, it's like unequivocally for them, you know? So yeah, I would describe my fiction as just like transgressive, dark, disturbing, maybe a little erotic in places. And it just has that kind of balance of the decadent and the beautiful and the sumptuous with like the grotesque, and the ugly and the unpleasant. You know, I grew up reading later in my high school days and like early college. I read like a ton of Poppy Z. Brite and Kathy Koja and Clive Barker and Dennis Cooper. So I was always really drawn to like the artists that married that, you know, level of like beauty and just splendor with the absolute like depraved acts of like their main characters, you know. So that's kind of like the overall kind of vibe that I go for. Like I'm very influenced by those authors, and I love fiction that like challenges people, really.
Well, that definitely comes across in your writing, and you tell stories that you clearly deeply care about. Like I can always tell when I mean, I might be totally wrong and really like blow my own horn or whatever, but I can always tell when somebody has genuinely enjoyed telling me that story, and that's when I'm the most engaged as a reader. Is I feel like when I'm reading your work that you're telling me the story,
Yeah.
not writing a book, and it's
And
just such a pleasure.
I hope that there's like kind of almost a little bit of like gleefulness to it. Like
Mhm,
I love artists and, authors that are excited about transgressing
mhm,
and challenging conventions in literature. And
mhm,
that's what I want to do most of all. And I want there to be that like joyfulness in it, even though I'm writing the most depraved and the most like debauched kind of material you can
mhm,
probably think of in like mainstream publishing.
mhm.
I want there to be like there's 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 a joy from me in the work. I feel
Yeah.
like 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 I'm happy and honored to like tell you this
Mhm.
story. So I'm really glad that that comes across in my work.
Oh, 100%. Oh, really? Oh, it did for me anyway. So I'm happy with it. The only thing I'm sad about is that I have only recently started reading your work. Like, I feel like I could have had more joy for longer had I have started reading it earlier. So now I've found you. That makes me really happy. And you've got such a huge back catalogue of stuff to read.
Yeah.
I'm thrilled. I'm so excited. So, just going back to Wretch for a moment. So, I believe that's your latest novel release.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, it was the cover that got me, and the name, and I was like, "Well, I don't even care what this is about. I want to read this book," and that's exactly why I picked it up. Because I think that is often the case for a lot of people when they're looking for a new book. And I was like, well, I know it's horror, so yeah, let's get into it. And I read it, and it was not at all what I thought it was going to be in a good way.
Yeah.
And it was just such a fascinating exploration into grief and the things that we will do when we lose somebody that we really care about. And I just want to know, like, did this just come to you as a story idea? Did you use it as a thing to work through something that you experienced? Like, how did it come about?
Yeah, I mean, the genesis for this book was quite personal in a
Mm,
way. When I was really much younger, when I was like in elementary school, I became very good friends with this very well-known like actress who lived in my hometown in Connecticut, and she was like in movies, she was on Broadway, and she took such an interest in me and my writing, because I always wanted to be a writer for
mhm,
as long as I could remember. I always wanted to just create and tell stories, and she saw that from a very early age. And she kind of took me under her wing and took me to like events. We went to like all these different concerts and plays in
mhm,
Connecticut and Massachusetts and like New England in general. We just like kind of went around to different events, and she really showed me what my life could be like if I stayed militant and like dedicated to my craft. And
mm.
I'm so grateful to have known her. Unfortunately, when I was like 14, 15, she passed away from breast cancer.
Oh,
So it was a really difficult, like devastating loss at such
mm,
a young age for me to like experience that, to like lose somebody who was so meaningful and so like, was such a huge role model in my life.
yeah.
So it was devastating for that reason. But even more so, like later on, like years passed after her demise, and I found myself wondering about like the complexities of our relationship. And I found
Mm,
myself wondering if I was misremembering her in some way.
interesting.
And I know that that sounds ridiculous because you might be saying like she took you under her wing, like she took you to all these events, she like
Mm,
absolutely adored you. Um I am unfortunately like I am a very like pessimistic kind of person, and
yeah.
I kind of always kind of err on the side of caution and like
Mm,
there's always like a darkness to anything I'm interacting with.
yeah.
And I'm always like worried, right? Like I'm always like concerned about something. And I found myself becoming concerned about my memories of her and if I was like misremembering them. And I thought that would be such an interesting component for a character, like
Mm.
in a story. And when my editor at Simon and Schuster Saga Press approached me and my agent about a novel that he wanted to commission me to write for
Mhm.
his imprint, I was like, I want to write about this grief, like misremembering somebody and like almost like stalking someone from beyond the grave,
Mhm.
and like haunting them, like haunting a ghost,
Mhm.
right? Like I really wanted the book to be about that. And I wanted it to be like an exploration of grief. I wanted it to be about sorrow, about like queer love specifically.
Mhm.
But it's really rooted in that friendship I had with that very wonderful person where
Mhm.
I found myself confused and like bewildered after she was gone and just like worried that I was misremembering. And I know that that's probably not the case, but
Yeah.
it filled me with so much doubt for so long, and I've only just come out on the other side of it where
Mhm.
I'm being, foolish thinking about that and thinking that I've misremembered how much she cared about me, right?
Yeah.
Like, um it's just ridiculous to think about that. So I approached the novel with that in mind, and I know Simeon is not a very like likable, sympathetic character, but I really wanted to write. I really love like morally gray, complex, complicated, like messy characters, and I
Mhm.
really just wanted to show queer people, specifically like queer men, at their most like unhinged and their
Mhm.
most feral and obscene.
Mhm.
So that's really like the genesis of this book, like all of the things I kind of dragged into the stew pot to make it.
Mhm. Well, it just goes to show that like ideas can come from absolutely anywhere, and most of the authors that I talk to have used their writing as a form of catharsis or working through like the complications of life, and it's just a much easier way of expressing yourself than telling people, like
Yeah,
than admitting issues that you have, or like confusion that you have out loud with your mouth is so much harder, I think, than I don't know, creating something fictional that you can insert those feelings into, because then you
totally.
can you can mold it, you can shape it, and you can make it,
You
you
can
can you
lie.
can you can lie, and you can give it the ending that you always wanted, or the ending that you were convinced was going to happen.
Yeah.
And that's I love that so much. Did you find that as you were writing Wretch that you were like remembering things more clearly? Was it helping you to work through that sort of doubt that you had?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, writing for me has always been hugely cathartic.
Mm.
Writing horror specifically is very cathartic for me. I grew up very scared, very frightened of pretty much everything,
Oh.
very just anxious about the world in general.
Mhm.
And for me, horror has always been like a safe space.
Yeah.
Horror has always been a place where I can confront those demons and work through that trauma in a really healthy, controlled environment.
Mhm.
And that's what the genre gives me. And,
Mhm.
horror has given me so much joy over the years because I really do love the genre and I really do love watching horror films. I love reading horror literature. Um, I love anything that's really dark and brooding and menacing, like I said earlier. But
Mhm.
I love working in the genre, especially because it gives me that freedom to
Mhm.
be messy and problematic and gross and disgusting and all those things. And
Mhm.
it's not as much frowned upon as it would be if you were like out in public or if you were like saying this stuff literally to
Yeah.
somebody.
Mhm.
Like you were saying, like you can say things, you can write things on the page
Mhm.
that you can't, like, it's just you can't translate that to the real world. And some of my stories have that like fantastical element, like some of my
Mhm.
Burnt Sparrow trilogy, like my book Everything the Darkness Eats has like some dark magic and like
Mhm.
supernatural elements in it. So that like is already kind of like not realistic.
Mhm.
But I am also writing about like human depravity and human
Hmm.
cruelty and specifically like intrusive thoughts. Like there's a story in the Trees group
Hmm.
because I bled there that's very much rooted in like my OCD like
Hmm.
diagnosis and like
Hmm.
dealing with obsessive thinking and ruminating and
Hmm.
just obsessions in general. So it gives me that freedom to just it's almost like an actor turning into like a different character on the
Hmm.
stage, and like my characters almost give me the confidence to say things that I normally wouldn't be able to say.
Hmm. There's a lot of I had some favorites of the Trees group because I bled there. It was all of them, but specifically specifically You're Not Supposed to Be Here.
Mhm.
That really felt like, and I promise you this is a compliment. I promise. I started reading horror because of the Reddit subreddit um No Sleep.
Oh yeah.
And it really reminded me of some of those stories, like the mood of it really reminded me of some of those stories that I used to really love from No Sleep. And I was like, this is exactly the kind of thing that I've been reading for years and years and years of my life. And again, I know I've said it like 3 times. I'm so angry at myself that I hadn't read your stuff sooner. um and there were actually a couple of stories in this collection that made me think about intrusive thoughts. And I think I can't remember the name of it now.
It's the there's Bodies Are for Burning that has the
With
where she's
the
like obsessed with fire and
Yes, and she's looking after her niece.
yes. Yeah.
Yes, that one. And the one, is it The Strange Thing We Become? No,
That
no, it's
that's
not.
like an online blog detailing a cancer
Oh,
diagnosis.
that was incredibly depressing. I loved it.
Thank you.
And you're welcome. And no, I can't remember. I thought I'd written it down, but I hadn't. Now I feel silly. But it's the one where somebody's mother comes back and they have to look after
Oh, I'll
her.
be gone by then.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll be gone by then. I was like, within the first few seconds of reading this thing, I was like, please don't do that. Please don't do that. And I was really
Right.
panicking. And I was like, I couldn't imagine how it was going to end. And you do this thing where you worry the reader.
Mhm.
You worry the reader when it comes to the characters and what's going to happen. And oftentimes I have found that it's not what I expect it's going to be, but it's still really horrendous for the most part. So you do a really good job of like subverting expectations when it comes to plot, which I find really fun because I find myself playing this game of like trying to guess how things end, and then I
Yeah.
ruin it for myself. But I don't get that from your work, which is really nice.
Oh, I appreciate that. I mean, I love subverting expectations and surprising readers because
Mhm.
that's what I want when I'm reading any sort of work.
Yeah. Again, it goes to show, and I think when people write the things that they want to read,
Yeah.
that's always going to get the best result at the end of the day. So when you write stories now, so you are traditionally published, but you also have published with like indie presses, so
Yeah.
you've had a lot of different experiences in the publishing world. So now, when you are working with these more traditional larger presses, do you find yourself having to think about the end consumer more than you did in the past, or do you still just write whatever you want to write, and if the readers like it, great?
I don't think about it too much while I'm actually writing and when I'm creating my work.
Mhm.
This is actually a really good example. I have a book coming out with Saga next year in
Mhm.
March called Brutes.
Mhm.
And it's about a gay wedding planner who is haunted by his past. But the most unusual thing about him is that he's obsessed with public executions. And
Oh.
so he's planning like these cheery sort of like life events for
Mhm.
people, but he's meanwhile surreptitiously nursing this really unhealthy obsession with like the art of public executions. Like all
Mhm.
throughout history, he's just obsessed with executions. So I wrote the first draft of this book,
Mhm.
and it was so dark and so bleak and
Mhm.
so um like not mainstream, not ready for prime time at all. Like it was the most heinous thing I probably could have ever written, and it was just so over the top. And
Mhm.
I gave it to my editor, and my editor was like, "We can't publish this."
That's a fantastic compliment.
My editor was like, "We can't publish this." So I had to basically rewrite the entire book from page 1 in
Fascinating.
like 6 months.
Oh my god.
Yeah. So I wrote like 2 books over the
Mhm.
course of a very short period of time.
Mhm.
But it comes back to that idea of like the end consumer, the
Mhm.
marketing, the sales department,
Mhm.
all of the things that go into like creating a book and putting it on the shelf, like in the bookstore.
Mhm.
You you need to kind of bend a little bit in
Yeah.
some of these situations if you want to like be in the game.
Mhm.
You really can't. I don't want to. I never like to be too prescriptive with my like writing advice, because like what is going to work for me is not going to work for you, and
Mhm.
like it's also different. But it's really difficult to be truly transgressive and like really kind of gonzo extreme in the mainstream publishing space, only
Mhm.
because so many of these publishers have like upper people, like masters that they need to like
Mhm.
serve. And there's like Books a Million and Barnes and Noble, and they may not buy copies of the book if it's like too extreme. Like one of my first Burnt Sparrow book, um that came out last year, there was some really questionable material in that book, and
Hmm.
there were some stores were kind of reluctant to carry the book, honestly,
Interesting.
because of the extremity of it. And
Mhm.
luckily it worked out. Like everything worked out, so
Mhm.
that's fine. But I find myself needing to think about the consumer and
Mhm.
the end goal in the editorial process,
Mhm.
when like the editor comes back to me and gives me that edit letter and then
Mhm.
says like, we need to change this, we need to do this, we need to do that. It's just part of the process, but that's
Mhm.
different. Publishing is totally different than
Mhm.
writing.
Yeah.
Like writing a book, like I
Mhm.
did my job when I first wrote that first draft. Like I
Mhm.
wrote a book that I wanted, that I knew I believed in, and
Mhm.
that I wanted to give to my editor. And then publishing is the thing that happens after you've written the
Mhm.
book, and it turns into like that conversation between you and your editor and like the sales team and the marketing and the publicity department, and that's
Mhm.
something totally separate than what I'm experiencing when I'm here at this desktop and
Mhm.
like typing away on my keyboard.
Yeah. Do you have any like non-negotiables with what you're willing to change to get it through the door?
I thought I did at one point, but there there was a thing that happened at a press I was at last year,
Mhm.
for one of my novels, and um, I kind of bent in the end of it, because
Mhm.
I really wanted the book to like go out as far as possible
Yeah.
and be sent out to like key people and key
Mhm.
accounts. Um, that being said, I look back on that and I honestly wonder if it changed anything,
Mm.
because the people who weren't going to like the book regardless,
Yeah.
they were never going to like the book based on
Mhm.
like taking out a few sentences here and there. And that's all what it amounted to. It was
Yeah.
just like a few sentences about just like a particular character and something he did. But
Mhm.
like for instance, my first book in my Burnt Sparrow trilogy, which came out last year, there's a really graphic scene in a bathtub in like the
Mhm.
middle of the book, and my editor really wanted me to cut it, and I told her, I said, this is really important to me, and I think it's important for this character to have this moment for this other character to witness this brutality and this cruelty. And I kind of laid out my case and I explained to her what I was thinking, and she let it slide. I mean, that that book ended up having that issue though later on with some stores being a little reluctant to carry it, but
Yeah.
it did work out in the end, and it was carried at all of the big, chain stores in the States and in Great Britain. So it worked out fine. But I don't know, it's difficult. It's like I feel like I'm really good at like pushing buttons and like crossing certain thresholds and like seeing how far I can take things with people, and like every person is kind of different in what they're willing to stomach from me, it feels like.
Well, I suppose you're going to find that, and if you if you're working with an editor that really really knows you and knows your work, and if you're able to explain, this thing is important to me, then I wouldn't doubt that they would be understanding and sort of let you get on with it, because I
Yeah,
mean, look at all of the success that you've had. It's not like you don't know what you're doing, or you're just coming in from nowhere
yeah,
and expecting people to just like get you and get what you're trying to do. You're obviously established as an author in your genre and in the quality of stuff you can produce. I imagine as time goes on, you'll be able to get away with more and more.
I hope so. I think the problem is like I think publishers, especially like the larger ones, and I love them. Like I love working with the big publishers because they have the marketing muscle that like the indie spaces, they unfortunately they just don't have the budget for that, which is really unfortunate. But I do love working with the big publishers, but I think they're really skittish about transgressive and disturbing material because they're really afraid of like backlash
Yeah.
and getting canceled. And when my novella Things Have Gotten Worse came out in 2021, like I was canceled on TikTok like 3 times. Like, you know, like, I'm like
So
used to it
ridiculous.
by now.
Yeah. I have not read it yet. It's on my list. Why did you have issues with it? Was it a specific part of the story? Was it like the whole thing?
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of people that were just not on board with a queer person writing about lesbians in such a
Hmm.
dark, depraved
Mhm.
way. They didn't like the way I wrote those characters.
Mhm.
And any reaction to a book, I feel like it's if that's the way you feel, that's the way you feel. I
Yeah.
think that that's valid.
Mhm.
Um, but I did find it interesting because I set out to write like a story. I didn't set out to be like a mouthpiece for
Mhm.
the entire queer community.
Yeah.
I just wanted to tell a story that was in my head and that I wanted to share with readers that
Mhm.
I thought was really transgressive and disturbing and cool.
Mhm.
And I wasn't trying to, say anything about lesbian relationships in
Mhm.
a detrimental or harmful way.
Yeah.
But people took it that way. So
People are gonna see what they wanna see, I think, and
yeah.
it's very, very easy to piss people off, I've noticed. People
Yeah,
are
and I
very
kind of like doing that a little bit. I
Mhm.
kinda like it.
It means that they are paying attention,
Yeah,
or while paying attention in their own way, I suppose, if they're not really getting what you're trying to do. But
right.
I mean, it just goes to show, like, when people give me book recommendations, just as an example, sometimes I'll read them and think this book is awful. I
Mm,
can't finish it. Like I will not finish a book if I don't like it. Because there are too many other books to read. And I want to give them my time.
it's a real problem.
Yeah. I always joke that if my TBR was a physical TBR and it fell over, it would kill me. Because that's just what it's like. Especially doing this show, because I have like 2 or 3 shows a week for the rest of the year booked up.
Wow.
And I try and read something from everybody, but it like sometimes I just can't finish it. But anyway, um, but they'll really, really love the thing that they've told me that I should read, and I think I cannot find a thing to love about it. I usually can find something, like something really small, even if it's tiny. but you're going to find that. And I suppose that kind of thickens your skin, and over time it's going to make it easier for you to take that kind of criticism or that reaction from people as a writer. And especially if you're going to write things that challenge people's perception and things that, you know, challenge how people interact with the world, because that's kind of what you're doing. And I don't know, I don't think that you can do what you do in the way that you do it without having that kind of backlash from someone, because there are pockets of people that really can't handle queer stuff anyway. So they're already out of the picture. But some of the subjects that you bring up, like the very last story in The Trees Grew, I found that really uncomfortable. But I saw the point to it. Like there was expression, and there was genuine emotion and complication and deep sadness to it. Like it wasn't just for no point. There was a point to it. Just because I couldn't relate to it as an individual, like, oh, I've both been through that thing myself. Like, it doesn't mean that you can't enjoy something. And I really do often wish that people could just try and understand things from a more like empathetic point of view of like, maybe someone has experienced
a lot of empathy anymore.
There really isn't. It's hard to watch.
And that's the thing I want with my fiction is I don't necessarily need you to empathize with the characters, because some of what they do, some of the actions they commit against each other and to themselves are so egregious and so harmful. But I don't want you to look away. I want you to keep looking, and I want you to look at the brutality and the cruelty and recognize what's wrong with it and what's wrong with like humanity. Because that's really what I'm writing about at the end of the day. Is I'm just writing about like human cruelty and human suffering.
Yeah. And I think there are many people who read to escape, and to be faced with really like a mirror of reality can be too much for some people.
I get it.
But I personally, like, I have a pretty good life, so reading horror is my escape. So I'm like, what's going on in here? And it makes me very excited. And I love writing horror, and it makes me feel really excited. And it's, as you said earlier, like for me, it's really gleeful, because it's like these like really things that go on in my head that I would never say out loud for fear of being committed, I can put onto the page, and that's totally fine. It's a wonderful act of resistance. It's a way to process stuff, and it is a form of escape if that's what you need. I love books and stories and stuff. It makes me really happy. So there's something that I often ask writers who are in a more sort of traditional publishing-y space. I don't think that's a real phrase, but we'll go with it. So at some point in your life, you wrote the first thing before you published anything. Did you ever consider self-publishing at any point, or have you ever done that in the past?
I actually, after Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke came out in 2021 with Weird Punk Books, which was a small like micro press in Minneapolis. The book was like going to be reissued by Titan, and I had some other things lined up in like late 2022, but I didn't have anything at the moment that people could like buy or like access and read and get a taste of what I wanted to create, because my book had been like pulled from circulation to be reissued by the larger publisher. So what I did was I self-published a novella called Lost a Lot of Blood, which was I just published through like Ingram Spark. And I had it like formatted and like the interior file done by like a friend of mine. And I had it like proofread and everything, and had Kim Jacobson do the cover art, who also did like the cover art for Things Have Gotten Worse. So it had that like just like really brutal sort of surreal look to it. And it was just like absolutely stunning, the cover art. So yeah, I did self-publish, and it's it's an interesting experience. It's so much work. It's so much work, and I always am so aggravated when people, like, kind of sneer at self-publishing and, like, look
Mhm,
down on it because it is just so grueling and so time-consuming,
mhm,
and, it's definitely not for the faint of heart,
mhm.
and I think it like, that was such a wonderful experience for me to put that out and see people's reactions to it, and it did, like, really, really well. It's,
Great.
like a it's I feel like one of the books that people cite to me in, like, when I do, like, events,
Mm,
um, so I'm, like, really proud that I put that out and that I did, like, self-publishing for that. So if you have, like, the drive and the determination to do it and put your all into it, I definitely think it can be, like, so emotionally rewarding.
yeah. I agree because I speak to a lot of self-published writers and not a huge amount of traditionally published writers because that's just the space I'm in. And it is like a full-time job to
Yeah,
self-publish stuff, but, like, having to also do a full-time job to fund that thing is
totally.
bananas to me because it's art, and I feel like it should be it's really accessible. Like, technically speaking, it's very, very accessible, but to get it to the level that people expect when they're looking for books at, like, Barnes& and Noble and places like that, it costs a hell of a lot of money to get
Yeah.
to that point, and it really is a project of passion for a lot of people. So I just thought it was interesting to know, um, if you would ever, like, self-publish anything again, or have you, like, done it and you've seen it now and you don't really wanna do it again?
I I think if I had something that I knew, like, I could never publish it in
Mm,
the big 5 or, like, even the indie space, like,
mhm,
the smaller presses, like, I feel like maybe I think I would go to the self-publishing route, like,
mhm,
if I knew something was, like, too much for, like, where I couldn't get an editor to, like, sign off on it.
mhm.
But it is, like, it's just so time consuming
I
and,
know.
it's a lot of work, and,
Mhm,
my hat's off to anybody who does self-publishing because
mhm,
it's certainly not easy, and it is such a difficult job, and you have to be, like, the marketing, you have to, like, be the publicist, you have to be everything in the end
mhm,
of the day for a self-published book, and it's just a huge time commitment, but
mhm.
that all said, I do think it is, like, rewarding at the
Yeah,
end of the day. If you put out something that you really believe in, that, like, you wrote from your heart and you were like, "I wanted to put this out because I don't want anyone to, like, tamper with it, and I don't want anyone to, like, spoil it," I
mhm,
think it can be, like, a really good option.
mhm. I think it's also a very good exercise to help you understand, like, the mechanisms behind getting a book out there into the world, because there are a lot of people that I speak to that are self-published, but they would love to be traditionally published, but it's such a competitive thing. I mean, there were well over 1,000, no, not 1,000, that's not that many, well over 1,000,000 authors on Amazon alone.
Wow.
How are you supposed to get anyone to look at your work unless you have the time, the money, the marketing, the skill, the experience, the name to do it? But I speak to people that still do it anyway because they love telling stories, and it's just so nice to see people in different sort of levels of their career. Like, at one point, you were, you seeking representation and still telling
Yeah.
stories anyway, and if to me on the outside, it looks like you've made it, like you're succeeding doing the thing that you want to do with your life.
I mean, if you have that, like, beast in you that you need to, like, create and get it out on the page and put
Mhm.
it out in the world, like, you will find a way to get it out there.
Yeah,
I really believe that because
I agree.
I was so tenacious, and I just, like, didn't take no for an answer because
Mhm.
the all the publishing industry does is, like, tell you no, I feel like,
Yeah.
it's just, like, rejection after rejection, and you really only need it's such a cliche, but, like, you really only need one person to just say yes to you.
Mhm.
But even if that person never comes along, like, thank goodness that there is the self-publishing
Mhm.
route, because you can get your work out there, and so many self-published books have gone on to become like huge bestsellers, right?
Mhm. Absolutely. It definitely feels like now I don't know if it's just the algorithm feeding me stuff, but it feels like now, like big publishers are really looking at self-published works and indie published works for like the next Dungeon Crawler Carl or whatever the thing is
Yeah.
that's going to blow up next.
Mhm.
It's just really interesting to see what's going on at the moment, and I couldn't predict it.
Yeah, I
No
think
idea what's going to happen.
that's the thing about publishing is, like,
Mm.
it's lightning in a bottle, you just can't recreate it, or
Yeah,
you just can't capture it, unfortunately.
yeah. But I suppose that's what makes it exciting, I
Yeah,
guess.
true.
So before I ask my closer questions, I did have a question for you that sort of came to me just before we came on. And for someone who writes such devastating stuff, do you ever finish writing a story, whatever stage of the sort of editing, whatever that you're in? Do you ever finish it and feel empty because you've just given it everything you possibly can?
It depends. I mean, there have been stories where I've felt, uh, like, creatively incapacitated in some way, like, that happened a lot when I was writing the first and second books of the Burnt Sparrow trilogy.
Mhm.
And it's funny because I actually recently finished the third and final book of
Mhm.
the Burnt Sparrow trilogy, and that moment was so beautiful because it was just
Yeah.
like, I'm done with it for now until like the editorial letter comes back. But
Mhm.
the first and second book, both of them, they end on like cliffhangers,
Mhm.
and it felt empty in a way. It felt like I was cut off from getting that hit of what I wanted to get,
Mhm.
with like that kind of creative high, or that feeling of like catharsis after
Mhm.
writing something so like bleak and depressing. Um,
Mhm.
but like I said, the third book, I just finished writing the third book, and that feeling of catharsis and like release was certainly there
Yeah.
after like going on a journey with these characters over the course of three books. It was such a lovely and special moment. Like, I'll definitely hold on to that for the rest of my life.
Mhm.
um, but yeah, I mean, there have been moments where I have, with other books, like felt kind of empty and raw and like a little vulnerable after Wretch. Like, I was pretty spent. I was pretty
No
like,
kidding.
yeah, I was pretty like, pretty vulnerable after writing that book, and it
Mhm.
takes me a while to like. I know I kind of, on the outside, I look very prolific. Like, I have two books coming out every year
Mhm.
until like 2028, the end of 2028.
That's amazing.
But I am like, after I finish writing a book
Mhm.
or a short story or anything, like, I need time to like decompress and
Mm.
like reset and like recalibrate.
Mhm.
So it probably looks like on the outside that I'm just like churning new fiction, new writing sort of out, but behind the scenes, like, I'm like laboring intensely over like copy edits. I'm laboring intensely over like just like the sentences that I like, the creating like the mood and like the atmosphere of like
Mhm.
these pieces. And but like, at the end of it, I'm so just creatively spent,
Mhm.
and I just need that time to like recalibrate. And like, so much of writing, I feel like, is not writing in a lot of ways, because you're like wandering around your house and you're just like thinking about, maybe I should have done this, maybe I could do this instead. And like, so much of writing, I feel like, is when you go out into the world and like see things or interact with people and
Mhm.
think about how it can inform your writing too.
Oh, for sure. And I think that's something that I wish if anybody's watching this or listening to this and you're having trouble with writer's block, even if you're just thinking about it, you're still working on it. 100%.
Exactly,
It's not
exactly.
just putting pen to paper or finger to key, whatever.
Yeah.
So, You said that you have to decompress sometimes after you've finished something. Do you have like go-to things that you do for yourself that make you feel a bit better, or do you just have to give yourself time and space?
I mean, I think it's time and space, but I
Mhm,
do love, like, a nice walk around the neighborhood. I do love,
mhm,
like, going to visit my parents in New Hampshire, um, just, like, simple things with my partner here in
mhm,
Boston. Like, I love just, like, going out for brunch or going shopping, like, just
mhm,
little things like that, going to get, like, coffee at our favorite, like, coffee shop, just, like, pleasant things, and it's so strange, but, like, I write, like, the most disturbing and, like, depraved stuff, but, like, my life is just so boring and so, like, humdrum, I feel like.
I mean, it's better than being an actual serial killer because that's
Yeah, that's
very
true.
stressful as a thing.
That's true.
Oh, thank you. I was curious, because some people have, like, rituals and stuff, and I'm glad that you were able to I mean, it sounds like you've been nurtured most of your life by someone,
Yeah,
and that must have equipped you with, like, pretty decent mechanisms for processing, um, especially, like, again, in the aftermath of sort of l almost living out something really awful and sort of documenting it for strangers to look at and judge, which
yeah,
is still it's like one of the most vulnerable things, I think, other
totally.
than going to see the gynecologist.
Yeah.
um, so I do have a couple of questions that I'd like to ask you before we leave for today. So as a writer, and we've kind of touched on this a little bit already, but what does success look like to you?
Success for me changes daily because there
Mhm,
are new things that I want to achieve and new
mhm,
things that I want to accomplish, like, before I die.
mhm,
I don't know why, but, like, I've been thinking so much about mortality lately and, like, what I'm gonna leave behind when
mm,
I'm, like, gone, and it's just, like, ignited a fire in me even more so than I already had, where I'm just like, I need to, like, create more art, I need to, like, write more, I need
mm,
to, go and, like, do more interviews and, like, do more book events, and I don't know, like, I think for me, success is just, like, ever shifting, ever
mm,
changing, and I know that like, is such a cop out of an answer, but that's just the way I feel, like,
mm,
so like, a few years ago, I really wanted to be reviewed by, like, the New York Times,
mm,
and I really wanted to be, like, on a bestseller list,
mhm,
and like in 2023, I was reviewed by the New York Times
mhm.
for Everything the Darkness Eats and The Trees Grew Because I Bled There, and they gave me like amazing reviews. And then recently, Wretch was a USA Today bestseller. Um, so I was
Congrats.
really, thank you. I was really happy about that.
Mhm,
But like when you achieve those things, my brain, the way it works is everything resets and I'm like, "All right, what's next? Like, what's the next thing I can, like, aim for, and what's the next" like,
mhm,
it's not like that stuff doesn't matter,
mhm.
but it just gets filed in, like, a different box, I feel like, in my brain,
Yeah.
and
Mm,
I'm just like, "All right, now I want this, now I want this and that." Like,
mhm.
so for me, success I feel like is so elusive in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
for me at least, like, the way I view it.
Mhm,
It's just, like, something that is just, like, always out of reach for
mhm.
me, unfortunately.
But you're still trying to chase it, whatever that goal is, so as
Yeah,
long as you're
yeah,
not giving up, I feel like that's pretty successful.
yeah, I
Mm,
I think that that's so true, like, the chase of it is more exciting than
mhm.
getting there.
Yeah, absolutely. And the same could be said for most things other than actual exercise, because I find that very stressful.
Same.
It's like me chasing whatever snack I can find. So, the last question that I'm gonna ask you is if you could go way, way back to when you first started writing, and it can be whatever stage you wanna think about. So whether it's when you were a kid and you were, writing whatever stories, or when you were first like, "Okay, well, I'm going to be a writer, and this is what I wanna do with my life." If you could give yourself any advice at that point, what advice would you give?
I think I would go back a few years to the version of Eric that had just put out Things Have Gotten Worse
Mhm.
and was getting, all that kind of all the love on one side, but then all the hate on the other side. And I think
Mhm.
I would just tell that person, you know, people's opinions of you don't define you.
Mhm.
And keep writing and keep creating, which is what I've done.
Mhm.
Um, and what I'm always going to do.
Yeah.
But I would just kind of encourage them to really be mindful about what they put into their brain.
Mm.
And then because that informs what they put out into the world,
Mm.
you know? So I would just really I would try to just nurture them and just say that, like, other people's opinions don't define you, and to just keep being yourself and keep on keeping on. That's really all you can do, is
Mhm.
just keep creating and keep being unabashedly you, because the people who identify with your work,
Mhm.
you're so important to them.
Mhm.
And that's what really matters. You're writing for yourself, first of all, but you're speaking to this amazing group of people that really do care about you. So that's what I would say.
That's nice. Well, hopefully, whoever's watching this or listening to this can take some of that advice as well and use it to help them get through whatever thing they're getting through. I just want to thank you so much for being here and for
Thank
answering all my
you.
silly little questions and for
This was
giving me your
great.
time. This has been so lovely, and yeah, you're great, and keep doing what you're doing because I want to keep reading what you're writing.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Of course.